talk about the School of Medicine's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Champion Training. And I wanted to understand from you how you feel the School of Medicine's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Training fits with our overall UCSF mission of advancing health worldwide.
Well, I think that we have all come to the conclusion, based on some growing evidence, that diversity really matters. That diversity actually helps an institution achieve the many lofty goals that it has for itself. And since our goal is to be the best biomedical research institution in the world, we feel that diversity is really critical for us. We've had a long history of valuing diversity, but we actually haven't worked in specific ways to make sure that what we believe we do, we actually do. And so we have made an effort, we are making an effort, beginning with our most recent change was several years ago in response to things that were going on in our community and around the country, and interactions between different races and different genders, and specifically as a result of police actions against young black men, our students became very concerned about what was happening nationally. Pointed out to us that we had a role to play in trying to address the various issues that were going on nationally and locally, especially as it related to young black men whose lives were being endangered by interactions, particularly with the police. But that then became a metaphor for a much larger effort that said, wait a minute, we need to just understand and value the fundamental thing, which is we value diversity. And so one of the things we've learned in our Differences Matter effort, which is a school-wide effort to try to educate ourselves and develop a system here at UCSF where we value the differences, we look for efforts to be inclusive, we value the diversity that exists among peoples, and we understand that by our collective working together, we can achieve outstanding outcomes. But for that to happen, each of us has to actually understand our own personal biases, like what things we do wrong, but also be willing to call out others and ourselves when we see it in our environment. So we've been working very hard to educate each other about these unconscious biases, these microaggressions, the behaviors that we can exhibit with our peers and with our patients that can be just a problem for them. And so we're working to try to overcome that.
That's excellent. And the training has been broadly offered, and I understand that you partook of the full day of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Champion Training. And what was that day like for you? What was the impact of this training on you personally?
Yeah, so it's interesting because over the years in my leadership role, I've actually tried to think about this area a lot. And one of the things that I have done in trying to lead the Department of Medicine, which I was chair for a while, is I had all of my leaders take the implicit bias test, for example, which just allowed people to understand something about how implicit bias works in each of us. So I thought I went into this training with a base that was pretty solid until I sat there in this training and realized that, no, there's more to be done by me to make me a better person and make me able to deal with this. For example, the training was really an active training. So you participated in groups and you had situational stories described. You had to describe things from your own personal experience that you've dealt with. And it was very enlightening to hear other people describe things that have happened to them, how they reacted to it, how it made them feel. And it made me then understand some of the things that I was doing that inadvertently impacted others. I thought the leaders of the group that I attended were spectacular. They came from completely different backgrounds, totally different stories, but in the middle they had the same issue of microaggressions, implicit bias, issues that they said, from my perspective, I need to deal with, but they were coming at it from a whole different life experience. And watching that happen and watching them talk about it and then thinking about my own life made me think that I have work to do, and I think that the other people in the course realized they also had work to do. This course provides you with tools to recognize when it happens and to deal with it when it happens. What do you do when that has happened? And so I thought the course was excellent and giving me additional tools to try to be a better person.
Excellent. I think it's critically important that we think about how do we interrupt bias and how do we recognize the areas in which we have privilege and how does that privilege play out, and are we responsible with our privilege? And so from that, as a leader and a member of the Chancellor's Cabinet, and we talk about other leaders, what are your thoughts on what leaders really should do to champion diversity, equity, and inclusion at UCSF? How do we get to this point of actually living our commitment? Because we've come a long way in stating our commitment, building capacity around diversity, equity, inclusion, but how do we fully live our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and what can leaders do in that role?
Well, I think the first thing is to just acknowledge that it's not as easy as we think it is. It is difficult. Second is to acknowledge that that our environment actually really requires us to do better if we really want to be the outstanding institution we hope to be in the future. And being committed to putting in the effort and suffering the uncomfortable consequences of saying this is something that we really highly value. There are people who just don't want to talk about it. There are people who don't have any doubt in their mind that they are right, and that whatever they think is right is what everybody else should think is right. And there are people who can't actually see that some of the things they say are hurtful to others. And I think first, as leaders, we have to actually live it ourselves. So we actually have to understand ourselves and be able to live and lead in a way that values diversity, is committed to inclusion, so that we do it. So I think that's the first thing. We have to live it. We have to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Absolutely.
Right? The second is, it's hard. I mean, I think the one thing I love about UCSF is that we are committed to diversity, and we actually now understand that if you're going to have a diverse environment, it makes it a lot more difficult. Then finally, I think our leaders have to make our goals, set metrics, and then work hard to achieve them. And that just takes time and effort and resources. And we should actually find those resources. It's worth paying for.
Excellent. Well, I thank you very much. You're a bold and exemplary leader in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, so I appreciate your comments.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your work.
Thank you.